Nigeria and Ethiopia signed bilateral agreements on defense and diplomacy.
The two countries need to counter terrorism and promote closer collaboration in security areas. So the signing of that agreement is a step forward for our two countries to move forward.
Inspector General of Police calls for synergy among agencies as they intensify efforts to counter security challenges.
Federal government to mobilize resources for the commencement of the Mambila Manpower project.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the management of bank balances of deceased persons.
Already they have the person's next of kin's details. So they should contact the next of kin. And again, advice to families who bank without letting the other families know.
Well, there was a post trending a few days ago, Kingsley. It was reportedly the confession and warning of a female bank manager revealing how banks withdraw and spend dead people's money. She went on to allege that banks are filled with monies of dead men and women who keep their bank accounts secret from their spouses, and how such monies are subsequently lost in the system.
In fact, Kirian, now some experts say that an audit of the value of funds left and forgotten in banks by dead people across the country may indeed run into several billions of naira. And unfortunately, not all of the relatives of such dead persons actually know about the money. So what happens to those monies left by clients who have passed on and the banks are in possession of such balances?
And another post on the issue alleged that when a person dies with money left in the bank does not voluntarily move to return the money to the next of kin listed with them without the next of kin or of the dead or the relative making the move to claim the funds. Well, this issue has generated some angry responses from several online platforms, seeing how it is very easy for a living person to put money in a bank account in Nigeria, but very hard for the person's surviving relative to get it out after the account holder dies.
Well, the process of reclaiming deposits of dead relatives mostly turns out to be a long, drawn and excruciating one, Kyria. That's a process, of course, that will require the services of a lawyer, depending on two aspects, whether the individual died with a will or died without a will. Let's just say the person passed away intestate. Now, the person will also have to pay, that's the person making the claim, some fees, which is usually a percentage of the money being held in the account for it to be accessed. And that process, as we said, can take quite a while.
Well, in fact, some dead people's money never, leave the banks and are forever lost because the relatives are ignorant about, as many Nigerians have the superstitious fear of making a will, and the lack of a will makes it difficult to properly dispose of the property and the estate upon the demise of that person. A will can make it easier to access a dead person's bank deposit as long as they are specified in the will.
So, when a relative or a spouse dies and the family members are aware that the deceased person has some money in one or several banks, how can such monies be claimed by the survivors? Can the next of kin simply walk into the bank to make a demand for the funds? And what if there is no next of kin listed on the record of the bank?
A very significant point there you have raised, Kingsley. And what is there is what if there is no next of kin listed? And what if the next of kin is deceased and the bank's record was not updated before the person passed on? How much does that complicate the issue of trying to access a dead relative's fund? Well, we will have guests on the program to respond to the questions and more in the course of the program. And it is on that note that we welcome you to the midweek's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And Kirian, we're talking about next of kin. It's not uncommon for some persons to simply just fill in the name of any person. I said next of kin. They said, okay, I'm staying, assuming you stay in Abuja, in Lagos, or some other major city. You say, okay, this uncle or relative or friend that I'm staying with should be my next of kin. And of course, you never know what's going to happen. And you have, as we are discussing later on in the program, you have some deposit left in your account, and the person has passed on. Who is the rightful person that can have access to those funds? And
on many occasions, many Nigerians don't even understand what next of kin really means.
That's right.
And what's attached to it in the case of somebody dying. So in many forms that we feel, not just in the bank and elsewhere, next of kin is very important. Yes, next of kin is very important, and we should. Well, of course, as the program progresses, we will of course make an impact by way of doing analysis with our guests, on the issue.
On that issue. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I join my colleague Kirian Umayo in also welcoming you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We have our complimentary segments, including newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's join Musbah Udan Wahab, who is already here with us in the studios to give us the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Musbah.
So very good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. You've got a very serious issue at hand to discuss this morning. But first, let's take the news. The wide-ranging partnership between Nigeria and Ethiopia has gained momentum and vigor as the two countries boost the mechanisms of cooperation with the signing of two bilateral agreements on defense and diplomacy. This formed the highlight of high-level talks between President Muhammadu Buhari and Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, in Addis Ababa.
Defense cooperation, that two countries need to counter terrorism and promote closer collaboration in security areas. So the signing of that agreement is a step forward for our two countries to move forward. The second one has to do with exemption of visas to ensure that we create people-to-people contacts and then move forward our interest in the official political cooperation.
Still in Ethiopia, President Muhammadu Buhari has restated the unshakable resolve of the Nigerian government towards combating and defeating all acts of criminality, banditry and terrorism for sustainable peace and development in their country. This was at a meeting with the Executive Committee members of the Nigerian community in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where he also appealed to Nigerians to support and cooperate with security agencies as they remain steadfast in defending and preserving national unity, stability, and territorial integrity.
Abroad, the world is therefore watching you and would make judgments on Nigeria based on your comportment and actions. Second, in whatever legitimate engagements you find yourself, you must strive to excel and be the best. Third, while you are out in the diaspora, do not forget home, as you represent some of the best human assets that Nigeria.
Back in Nigeria, the National Assembly suspended Tuesday's plenary in honor of late Senator Ignatius Longjan, who died on Monday, 10th of February 2020.
We are consoled that he led an enviable life, a life of patriotism, a life of service.
The Distinguished Excellency Ignatius Longjan is to me a father, one that I enjoyed his fatherly backing, his advices and friendship.
Apart from being a colleague, he's a good friend, he's a leader that would rely on, and it's a great loss to me and Plateau State in general.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has solicited the cooperation of the U.S. government towards a review of a recent visa restriction order on Nigerians. This was when the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, received the U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, Mary Beth Leonard.
And we'll sit down and figure out what the issues are and how we can fast-track resolution of those issues, and so that this will come or will disappear or go away as fast as it came. We'll appreciate it.
It is not a visa ban. It is a question of improving some information sharing practices between the government of Nigeria and the United States. And so it was announced as what has always been intended as a very temporary measure, the suspension of immigrant visas while we resolve some of those technical issues.
On infrastructure development, the federal government has further demonstrated its commitment to construct the Mambila Power Project conceived 40 years ago, with inauguration of 2 committees to mobilize resources to commence work on the project that will deliver 3,050 megawatts of electricity to Nigerians.
The ministry, prior to inauguration of this committee, has already taken a number of critical steps to ensure the successful takeoff of the project.
We have been given this responsibility, and we intend to make sure that we deliver on the mandate given to us.
The host community will cooperate to make sure that this project is executed timely.
Now, naturally endowed with mineral and agricultural resources, Ekiti State's agrarian status is about to change in a strategic partnership with the Nigerian Air Force.
We believe that this industry, the aviation industry, is an economic generator itself, which would equate to job creation, solid source of income for us. And the proposed land covering area, about 40,000 acres of land, producing within the next 1 year about 10,000 liters a day of milk, which will need to be transported regularly.
Side by side to ensure that we support this strategic initiative of building an agro-allied international airport that will not only support our air operations but will also add value to the security or to the efforts of making Ekiti a secure environment.
And similarly, security agencies are stepping up to counter emerging challenges, especially terrorism and other criminalities. To this end, a leadership course in counter-terrorism and violent extremism has been held in Abuja, where the Inspector General of Police restated the significance of synergy among security agencies.
Unfortunately, the Sahel region is burning, and the Sahel region includes the fringes of northeast Nigeria. And if those areas are not settled, we in Nigeria cannot be sleeping.
Leadership of various security agencies must see the need to further liaise and cooperate and collaborate among themselves in various areas of security interest through information and intelligence sharing.
In the health sector, beneficiaries of free eye surgeries and services are commending the Cross River State Governor, Ben Ayade, for taking adequate medical attention to the less privileged with critical eye-related illnesses in the rural areas. This was at the flag-off of 1,000 free eye surgeries across the 18 local government areas of the state by the Commissioner for Health, Dr. Beta Edu, at Akampa local government area.
I take God and say thank you. I don't have anything to give God. I just tell and say thank you. God will help him.
Some of us, we don't have money to even feed our children ourselves for 3 square meals that night that we should have money to go and purchase a class.
The idea is to set up these camps, reach them where they live in their own communities, and indeed offer them that eye care which they truly deserve.
The eye camps are also expected to be replicated in schools.
That ends the news highlight for this morning. Join us for more in the course of the day. But after the break, Kinsley and Kieran will be back to continue Good Morning Nigeria. We have a very serious issue at hand. Good morning.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Goge Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnerships with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Studio 24, Delta Airline, Toll Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Goge Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
Introducing the new and tasty Peak Yogurt. The nourishment to be you, do you, and go for you. Peak Yogurt comes in orange, strawberry, and plain sweetened flavour. All available in nearby stores.
City Hot. Let's go, guys.
Babe.
Yeah.
Would you please turn on your hotspot?
Okay, there you go. My lady. Ladies boy. Hey, hold this guy down.
Password, please.
0808.
Babe.
Yeah.
You have a message.
From what? Do maybe? Read it out now. Read it out to my ears.
Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. Dial *315# to join.
Fine girl. Can I have your phone, man?
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Choose Dano Milk for your family because 100% of our milk is sourced from our farms. This means that we control the entire production process from grass to glass, taking great care in every step to ensure the milk that gets to you is of high quality, great tasting, and enriched with essential nutrients that are great for your family. Available in Dano Cool Cow, Dano Full Cream, Dano Slim, and Dano Flavored Milk.
This year, the weather conditions Harmattan in Nigeria is harsh, with temperature dropping very low in some parts of the country. Many underprivileged children are exposed to these harsh weather conditions, putting them at risk to all sorts of respiratory infections with devastating consequences. We request well-meaning Nigerians to kindly donate warm clothing, blankets, beverages, soap, moisturizers, and other essential items for the benefit of these children. Get involved to support displaced and underprivileged children exposed to these harsh weather conditions. Powered by Aisha Buhari Foundation.
You're on to Good Morning Nigeria. And now let's go business. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is urging low-income countries to focus more on their debt strategies to avoid crisis. These and more on Business News with Abdul Karim Zurumi.
The International Monetary Fund has urged low-income countries to focus their approach on debt strategy. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva also encouraged these countries on transparency and reporting, stating that it would be in everyone's interest. She made this position known during a joint event hosted by the World Bank in Washington, D.C., where she also added that long-term interest rates are low in Europe and US, and as such, they are looking for places with higher returns. She, however, cautioned low-income countries to be wary of loading up on debt. Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Nigeria has engaged with some companies in the dairy industry as part of efforts to increase local milk production, its derivatives, and dairy products. This was contained in a circular to all forex dealers by Director Trade and Exchange Department of Apex Bank, Dr. Uzuemena Naji. The circular added that all Forms M from the importation of milk and its derivatives should be cancelled immediately. The 6 companies are said to have complied with the backward integration program to boost local production and consumption. Now let's go to the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see how the market fared on Tuesday, 11th of February 2020, as massive sell-off continues to take its toll on big cap equities. With business news, Abdul Karim Zurbi.
Many thanks, Abdul Karim, for the business package. Newspaper review is next.
And we welcome Bayo Atoyebi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, it's good to have you this morning.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, President. Okay. Good morning, Nigeria.
We have just 3 papers. One, of course, has the editorial. Leadership is our first paper for review this morning. And immediately below the nameplate, it comes with a kicker. Audit report. Senate threatens indicted heads of MGAs. That story continues on page 5. And the photograph there shows former First Lady, Patience Jonathan, with current First Lady Aisha Buhari, when Patience Jonathan visited the incumbent at the presidential villa in Abuja. That was 2 days ago. Lead story says, 2023, Nigerians abroad may vote as President Muhammadu Buhari backs diaspora voting. Says the people must prevail on National Assembly to amend Constitution and assures of improved security. And then right at the foot of the front page there of the Leadership newspaper, Ekiti approves 6-month maternity leave for mothers. For workers. Ekiti approves 6-month maternity leave for workers. That's on page 6. CBN restricts forex for milk importation, exempts 6 firms, page 21. Explosions rock Edo APC's scribe's home. That's page 10. And Transcorp Group makes new executive and other board appointments.
All right, let's turn to the Daily Sun newspaper on the right-hand side of the nameplate. Asset declaration. Kuka, Buhari's aide disagree at ex-EFCC chair's book launch. With the rider, the president never promised public declaration of assets, says presidential spokesman. That story is on page 8. And below the nameplate, Transcorp announces new GCO, appoints executive and non-executive board. It's on page 38. Now, the lead story, Buhari, I will defeat terrorism. That's a story you can see fully on page 6. And now below the photo story, the Daily Sun newspaper, federal government, U.S. signed $1.1 million grant for electricity development in Nigeria. That's on page 37. Imo, PDP protests at UN, EU, French embassies. You can't stop us from demonstrating.
party, tells Uzodinma. The story is on pages 9 and 10 of the Daily Sun. Oni Sultan lead traditional rulers to Oshu for Security Summit. That's on page 40. Protesters demand exit of Amnesty International from Nigeria. That story can be read on page 9 of the Daily Sun. Let's bring in Bayo now.
Well, let's start with the development in Ethiopia, particularly that President Muhammadu Buhari has said that Nigerians living abroad, if they desire to participate in our subsequent general elections, it will be a welcome idea and he has no objection. However, here is a caveat. He said the National Assembly need to be persuaded to amend the 1999 Constitution to accommodate and provide for that opportunity. Meanwhile, the leader of the Nigerians resident in Ethiopia, David Omozwafo, had enjoined the federal government to fast-track the Memorandum of Understanding with the United Nations, especially relating to junior professionals. He says this is to allow young Nigerians get an opportunity to serve in international organizations like the AU, the UN, the AU, the ECOWAS, and also the ECOWAS volunteer forces. There is indications too that parents of out-of-school children risk being prosecuted. The Minister of Education, Adamu, at a meeting with the House of Representatives Committee on Basic Education, suggested that there is the need to establish what he called a watch-out group as a kind of task force. Kaduna State has something like that. They call it education marshal. They go around the town. If you are a child of school age and you are not in school and you are seen roaming, you will be arrested and taken to school. So the minister is saying that the basic education should be treated as a basic right and therefore a crime to humanity when children are so denied an opportunity to that education. He said the strategy is to sensitize traditional rulers and also encourage state government to put more investment, more money in basic education in their area. He lamented that most African countries devote a substantial part of their budget to education, but in Nigeria, we hardly have up to 10% for education. He also indicated that, sadly, the unity schools, that is the federal government colleges that we have there is a prescription for them for 200 naira per meal a day. That is, each of the 3 meals a day should estimated cost about 200 naira. But what they get paid is 120 naira. And that is why sometimes you have a challenge of these pupils not being fed very well.
Yeah, there's this story of Oni Sultan lead traditional rulers to Oshu for Security Summit. My concern here really is that if the traditional rulers show much concern about security, it's a welcome development. Because the security of this country, in fact, should be, addressed, from all fronts, right? Because if traditional rulers weigh into that, and of course, perhaps develop some strategies on their own, because most of the criminal activities take place in the hinterland, where they are actually the alter ego, right? And the police cannot function effectively and efficiently when they do not have the support of the masses, especially the traditional rulers.
Well, is there anybody who is not concerned about the security in the nation now? And you cannot leave our traditional rulers as fathers of our culture and of our people. And don't forget too that there is a deliberate policy of government now to look in the direction of community policing. And the emphasis is that traditional institutions, which the traditional rulers head, will be the nexus for establishing the community policing. And that is why there's a proposal to recruit 50 constables for the purpose of community policing per every local government of the federation. And so when traditional rulers gather together, I think it is in tune with the idea of community policing involving traditional rulers. Ideally, in most communities, the moment a stranger comes into the community, the first person to know is the traditional ruler. Exactly. Because they have their own network that they are able to monitor their communities. And therefore, if they rein in and get the cooperation of traditional rulers, I think some of the challenges of the security that we are having will have been actually addressed. So it's a very positive move.
Well, there is a story, the late story we read from the leadership newspaper about diaspora voting. You know, it's been on the cards for many years now. Nigerians who are abroad, you know, desire to have a voice in the choice of those who govern, you know, at whatever levels when elections have been conducted. It would be a sweet development if Nigerians abroad were to be in a position to be able to cast their votes in an election. But much more important, in my opinion, is whether the votes count. Ultimately, yeah, they could vote, but will those votes count? A year ago, we saw what happened with the kickoff of the presidential election, February last year. Everybody saw, you know, on social media, on traditional media, how the votes, ballots cast by voters were destroyed by rampaging thugs, say in Okota in Lagos, for instance. And elsewhere, you saw how voting was either disrupted or otherwise. Those votes did not count. What has happened to those persons?
That's a big question. And, you know, diaspora voting is a healthy development, but handling the votes, as Kingsley pointed out, is a key issue here, because locally, you know how our own elections are handled down here. From what Kingsley has mentioned, you know, it's a crisis everywhere during election. And now when the diaspora, and Nigerians are everywhere across the globe, so how is it going to be coordinated? We're not into electronic voting. Who will be in charge? Is there going to be an INEC in the diaspora? Who's going to be in charge to channel all the votes, you know, to the right sources for them to count, as Kingsley said? So it's going to be a very dicey thing to do, actually, you know, in as much as it's very, it's healthy. But then, I think we need to mature into that. I don't believe that we have the logistics or the strategies that can make it work.
Yeah, what is worth doing at all is worth doing well. There's no saying the fact that Nigerians abroad are desirous of being part of the electoral process. But the only way they can do that effectively, as is practiced elsewhere, is if the voting system accommodates electronic voting. In most countries that do diaspora voting, you go to the High Commission or the embassy. That is the venue for you to cast your vote. And those votes are usually done by and transmitted back to the country by means of electronic means. The fear for us for electronic means that we are aware of our Yahoo boys and all what is going on. And the fear of manipulation of the electronic system is a big challenge. But that notwithstanding, where there is a desire and when there is a problem, we need to solve the problem to be able to achieve the desire and meet the expectation of our competitors who live abroad.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 26 years ago, specifically in April of 1994, when South Africa held its first non-racial elections, South Africans who were outside the country had the opportunity of voting. And in fact, the first vote in that election was cast by Nelson Mandela's niece. She was living in New Zealand because, of course, in New Zealand, the sun rises much earlier in New Zealand, you know, before it rises in South Africa. Those votes come. That's right, you know. But how do you ensure that the transmission of those votes? So we can clamor for it, clamor, and then once you have it, you see the practical challenges of implementation.
When they talk about diaspora voting, in most instances, it does not go on the same day of the elections. Sometimes they vote either earlier or vote later. In fact, there are other instances whereby personnel who are engaged in election, because they are busy, they are not able to vote. So later on, they set out a date for them to be part of the process. So all those can be arranged.
Not a date later. Yeah. It's usually a day before.
Okay.
But you have also seen videos, and those videos have not been disputed, of some ad hoc staff printing ballot papers. Those are the people you want to go and ask to vote earlier. Let's take
rigging avenue.
You know, it's potential.
There's a potential.
Yes, well, these are challenges and issues that, of course, we'll begin to address as we ensure that the integrity of our elections continues to ramp up. Let's take the editorial. It is from Daily Trust newspaper at page 14. Police don't need another institute. Now, the editorial begins by saying the Nigerian Police Force on Tuesday announced the establishment of a National Institute for Police Studies. First Public Relations Officer said the institute, which is an affiliate of the Nigeria Police Force Academy, WUDIL in Kano, will provide police personnel alongside other members of the national security community with needed skills and knowledge on safety and security. The editorial says, in recent times, there seems to be a race amongst the security agencies in the country in the setting up of one institute or the other. The Army, Navy, and Air Force have established universities or institutes in addition to their training institutes that have been upgraded to meet the changing times. There is the Nigeria Defense College, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, which trains senior officers in policy and advanced defense issues. It is our belief that the Nigeria Police Force should exploit all the available numerous avenues to train their senior personnel and carry out any study instead of adding another expenditure burden on the nation.
Yes, indeed, you have summed it all up.
No, it's the editorial.
Yes, that is exactly what the editorial is saying. Yes. The opinion is that already the police has several opportunities, other institutions that are coexisting around the country, and therefore it should not just be a vogue within the security forces. Everybody, every security arm trying to establish one institution, one university, one academy or the other. And the editorial is of concern that rather than deploy resources that they should use to equip and recruit more police, will now be deployed to establish an institution which will again establish a kind of infrastructure that will consume more resources, and there will be less for enhancing the efficiency of the police. Already, a professor of police studies has been identified as the director of that institute. But the editorial is saying that, yes, it may be good to have such an institute, but the challenges and the requirement of the police is in the strength of its personnel and also equipping them effectively rather than deplete the meager resources it has to establish another institute.
Yeah, I believe that many Nigerians will prefer to have more policemen recruited in this country and equipped properly, because the institutes that we have already on ground are capable of course, a growing, very well-trained police personnel. And in a country where we all clamor for additional security operatives because, of course, we are under-policed when it comes to international best practice, we're over about 200 million and we have less than 500,000, policemen, policing the country. It is grossly inadequate, and many Nigerians would love to see more men employed by the Nigerian police, because of course there are emerging criminalities, new ones are developing every day with technology and all of that. Nigerians are even advancing further, being more creative, in the criminal world, devising some strategies and methods, to, of course, deny people their rights, on the highways and elsewhere.
Well, policing, again, is a factor of an environment. If you look at our police service, each time they have gone on international assignment, our police have excelled. And that indicates that the kind of training they have here locally is good enough and can compete anywhere in the world. Exactly. But there's no gainsaying the fact that you still can benefit more from sharpening their skills with such an institute. But be that as it may, the essence is use your resources effectively. Presently, one paper 2 days ago was saying that the strength of the Nigerian police now is about 178,000. And looking at our population put at about 19.2 million, we cannot meet the UN standard of 1 to 450 citizens by police to citizens. Presently, it's about 1 to 1,146 citizens. It's grossly inadequate.
Yeah, and the fact that, look, we always talk about research institutes in the country, and we also have universities. So what then is the interface between the town and the gown? Assuming you take the security agencies to be the town and the gown. So if there are issues, why don't you consult universities and make them relevant to whatever you are doing? I don't know. It's like everybody you must have yours. You must have yours. You must have yours. Yes, you must have yours.
If you know
and then there is administrative overhead you have to bear. In order to run what you have established. Yes. What you have established.
We have very, very many research institutes across the country. Research institutes that can research into diverse sectors of our national life. And they are not being adequately utilized. That's just the point. The research, if it comes to science, for instance, the research results are there. Research findings are there. But it's just for someone to, facilitate those results to get to the floor of the manufacturing sector.
I think the idea is good, but the circumstance and the situation makes it rather challenging.
Sorry, what makes it challenging? I don't quite get that, Bio.
What I simply mean is that, yes, the idea of having an institute that will enhance the training of police officers to enhance their proficiency is good. But now, the challenge is the inadequacy of personnel, inadequacy of facilities. And those need to be addressed, because what happens when you train personnel, highly trained, but you have shortage of manpower and equipment for them to carry out their duties?
And the manpower that they have, some of them deployed for private security guard duties. Okay. All right, Baya Chebe, we'd like to thank you for being around. We'll see you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with a matter that should be of interest for all of us. If you have money in the bank, don't forget, none of us is going to be around forever. At some point, you answer the call. What happens to your bank balance when you are gone?
Nigeria is our country, and it's the only country we have. Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It will be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
Sports coverage and reporting require special skills which can only be acquired through training and experience. NTA TV College JOS invites sports reporters, administrators, commentators in the private and public sector to a special 2-week capacity building course on sports coverage and reporting skills in broadcasting. The course will equip participants with contemporary reporting skills for local and international sports and also expose participants to modern trends in sports commentaries, scripting, shooting, directing, and much more. Take advantage of the course to develop your skills and capacities in sports coverage and reporting. Date 17th to 28th February 2020. Course fee 80,000 Naira only, accommodation inclusive. Running concurrently is a special 4-week intensive course on record management and registry functions. Participants will be tutored on modern techniques of record keeping and registry management. Date 17th February to 13th March 2020. Course fee 100,000 Naira only. Accommodation inclusive. Venue of both courses is the serene and secure environment of NTA TV College near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos, Plateau State. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
My name is Giato Adeza Adams, the General Manager, Corporate and Strategic Communications, Nigerian Port Authority. As regards the land borders closure, available statistical data from APMT, which is one of our terminal operators that is involved in container handling terminal, has recorded an increase of 200 TEUs of cargoes into their terminal as a result of cargo diversion from the vessels originally meant for our neighboring countries. That shows you that the terminal operators is going to have an increase in revenue, which is accrued to the terminal, and at the same time, Nigerian Port Authority will equally benefit from the revenue increase. So that is the benefit we have derived from the border closure.
the lack of electricity has really brought up multi-dimensional challenges of human existence.
People are really suffering. They are really suffering.
Whatever we want to do, we are just managing ourselves.
We are praying to have something.
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up till this moment. We have informed you earlier on that our focus today is on managing deposits or bank balances of deceased persons. And our correspondent, Victor Azu, asked a cross-section of Nigerians what they think.
Most of those bank manager and accounting officers go as far as taking that money without informing the family of the deceased, which is criminalized. It is not good for the society. And if the CBN can do something concerning that, I think it will help the family of the deceased so that they had earned money the family has acquired for, the deceased has acquired for, the children can be benefit. And some of those money too are stolen money. Some of those money are stolen money. They acquire it illegal and dump it in the bank.
Actually, I don't think it's a difficult something. Already they have the person's next of kin's details. So they should contact the next of kin. And again, advice to families who bank without letting the other families know. Because, for example, me, personally, then I used my son as my next of kin, but now I have changed it to my wife. You know, she will know the details of my own transaction with any bank I'm banking with. You understand? So the two of us cannot die at the same time. Yes. So even if the bank did not contact her, she will contact the bank.
You know, when someone passes away, you know, the property or any other, you know, valuable item has to be passed on to probably next of kin. Yeah, I think, and that's why when, especially old men, when they pass away, they write down wills. Every human being should have an attorney, you know, a lawyer that can defend them if that situation arises.
I think you should just have a good record about that person, understand? If the person is a brother or a sister, at least there are some certain things you need to know about the person. Because if I have a brother and I don't know anything about my brother, I don't know where he works, and I don't know the document attached to him and in his working place, how will I be able to know he has pension? You ask questions. Or savings, or rather, you ask questions, you know what and what is there, so that in case you're no longer there, your children might also go out there to like, okay, this is what my father have, this is what my mother have. In case you don't have children, you relate it to your family also, so that they can easily go to the bank and make sure they provide the necessary document they need to provide, so that your savings or your money in the bank can come out easily. But cases where you are not aware and you don't know the steps and procedures to follow, I don't think it will be easy for you to get that, because bank need facts.
All right, a cross-section of Nigerians there expressing their views on this subject matter. But we have guests with us here in the studios as well as at our Lagos Network Center. Let's welcome Adamu Modibo, who is a former banker and also former managing director of Sigma Pensions. Adamu, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kinsley, for having me.
All right. We also have with us here in the studios Afam Osigwe. Afam Osigwe is the former general secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association. Pleasure to have you around with us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And then Kieran, we also have with us a retired director of the Central Bank of Nigeria and is also now a financial inclusion, SME and agribusiness facilitator. Muhammad Ali Baba.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you with us on the program. Pleasure to have you around.
Well, yeah, and also with us this morning from our Lagos studio is Shegu Ajibola. Shegu is former president, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Good morning and welcome to the program. Well, okay, gentlemen. Audio. Well,
our engineers will clear that up.
In the course of the program, of course, we'll likely have a clear signal, to talk to him.
Yeah, I'm just going to say before you pop the first question, but this is the reality that we all face. When human beings are alive, they forget that there's only one certainty, and that certainty is death. And when death occurs, it alters everything. You and I are sitting here. I'll tell you that, okay, Kieran, after this program, I'm going to the bank. I want to make a withdrawal, or you are a chief, so you probably will have more money. So you're going to the bank. You're going to the bank, and so on and so forth. The same thing with our viewers who are watching out there. But when the inevitable happens, we'll be unable to lift a finger, unable to lift a pen. What then happens, Kieran?
Yes. Interesting background you have laid there, and in fact it can also serve as a question. So let's go to Modibo immediately for him to respond to that. Actually, it's the situation that is inevitable. That man must go one day. What happens after him, especially if the person has some deposits in banks in Nigeria? Is it really true that bank managers and staff of banks, withdraw dead persons' money in this country?
It cannot be true, except, of course, in occasional cases of fraud and so on. But it's not like the moment you have an account in a bank and you die, then the bank manager has access to your own account and takes money away. That does not happen. And there are enough regulations to take care of this situation. However, you can handle this. First of all, there are a lot of funds trapped in banks belonging to deceased persons or belonging to people who have become incapacitated that cannot access the bank accounts themselves, or even people who have just abandoned the accounts and moved away, and there are some small balances in them. By the time you aggregate all these balances, you find out that it's a lot of money that is involved. There are regulations by central bank, I think as far back as 2015, that take care of all these situations. And the regulations talk about inactive accounts. In other words, any account that does not record any transaction, debit or credit, for 6 months becomes inactive. And then beyond 6 months, up to 1 year, it becomes dormant after 1 year. So then there are regulations that from time to time, the regulation requires the banks to contact the account holders to find out why the accounts are not active, or contact their next of kin. So in the case of the deceased persons who have died, left balances in their account and may not even have a will, because if you have a will, you will have recited that account in your own will and say you have willed it to so person. But maybe majority of Nigerians do not have wills, either because they don't have money to will, or because many of them do not believe in the will system. I'm a lawyer for about 35 years, but I'm a Muslim. I don't believe in writing wills, because the Sharia law has provided for how my estate will be distributed after I pass away. So it has gradually become a problem in this country. And maybe not even only in the banks, even in the stock exchange, in the stock market. There are a lot of deceased people who have invested in shares, and their shares are there in the custodian system that cannot be accessed by members of their own family, either because they do not know that he has such investments, or the procedure for accessing these bank accounts or the shares are very cumbersome. So there's a need, to me, it's a real problem. There's a need for central bank to look at the regulation again and make it onerous on banks to make sure they report these issues and find a way of resolving the problem. In the course of the discussion, one may have specific recommendations that we can make in that light.
All right. Thank you very much, Modibo. We understand that The audio from our Lagos Network Center has been cleared up now, and we can have Segun Ajibola, former president, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. You can see him there on the right side of our split screen. Mr. Ajibola, let's take advantage of having you right on air now to also get your comment. What is the usual practice? A person is alive, has an account with a bank, and then the person passes away. What is the bank expected to do, and what are the survivors of the account holder supposed to do?
Bank customers should be transparent enough to have information about their accounts and dealing with banks with their family members. You know, banks operate under certain strict rules and regulations. There is the oath of secrecy, and there is an ethical responsibility of confidentiality on the part of banks. So if you are a bank customer and something happens, you are off, none of your family members is aware of that relationship, it becomes a problem. Because unless the bank has express information about the death of that customer, it becomes difficult to deal with. You know, there are 3 events that automatically terminates the operation of an account with any bank: death, bankruptcy, and insanity on the part of an individual. So the operation of that account is automatically terminated. Now, for anybody to come forward and make claims on those accounts, is either you have a will, in which case the probate will issue an instruction to that event, or you come with a letter of administration. Letter of administration is not that easy to process given our judicial system in this part of the world. So you see some family members, when they are even aware, struggling for years to obtain letters of administration to go to the bank and claim these deposits. It is worse when they are not even aware. So for family members, for a family man, there is that issue of transparency in your dealings with your family members. Then Mr. Modibo mentioned the issue of next of kin. This has always been a problem with banks in Nigeria. Somebody who opens an account, maybe when he starts working and is unmarried, he picks a brother or a friend as next of kin, and he even forgets to change over after marriage, either to the wife or to the children if they are of age. Now there is a problem of a relation, either distant or close relation. Who is the next of kin? What will the bank do under that condition? So it's the whole gamut of all these problems that has created this gulf and has constituted a very worrisome situation for banks in dealing with disease deposits with them. As we go along, maybe one will be able to make certain recommendations how to come out of this logjam. It's not problem. The problem is not limited to bank deposit. Again, as Mr. Modibo said, even landed properties, there are wives that have properties, there are husbands that have properties. The unexpected happens. The wife is not aware that the husband has a property somewhere, and vice versa. Then there's problem of who claims, who make claims, what happens to such properties. So it's a complex web. But as far as bank deposits are concerned, we should be able to address it from regulatory point of view, from legislative point of view, and from the point of view of honesty and transparency in our dealings with our family members. So as we go along, we'll be able to make certain recommendations.
All right, thank you, Segun Ajibola. Now back to Abuja here. We can see the issue, as he said, is a complex web. Because of the issue of one starts work, you're a single person, and you must fill a form to be able to open an account, and you feel a friend or your younger or elder brother, as the case may be. And when you get married, you forget to change that. And when the unexpected happens, it becomes a huge problem. But my concern here has to do with what are the responsibilities of a bank. You know, you have a customer over the years and he passes on. What is your duty as a bank in terms of ensuring that the bank balance, you know, is not tampered with? And I will come to Muhammad Ali Baba, who was a former director at the Central Bank of Nigeria, which of course is the apex bank that exerts authority over commercial banks. What does the rule or regulation say about such situation?
Yeah, I think thank you for having me. As Mr. Modibo has said, there are regulations guiding, and just like Mr. Ajuwala has also emphasized, this issue of confidentiality. So usually the reporting is mostly to the regulatory authorities. He has mentioned the categories from, that leads to dormancy. Occasionally the reports are required as per regulation, regulation from the, supervisory authorities. But with respect to heirs or deceased, usually the initiative has to come from them, because ordinarily you won't go about disclosing this confidential information to relations or deceased. And then, just like he has also highlighted, except in the case of letters of administration or clearly written wills, the bank's hands are actually tied. And that's why, just like I said, a lot of these funds are abandoned. And then I think there's actually, now that it's being highlighted, there's need to actually look into them and see how we can, simplify these processes and grant access. But for now, I think as far as the regulations are concerned, the relationship between a bank is with its customer, not any other third party, except, like we said, under some legal instructions or regulatory requirements.
So, Muhammad Ali Baba, you say that the banks are required to make reports to the apex bank when circumstances such as we are discussing now occur. What does the central bank do with such reports?
Well, central bank does several things with that report, at least for in the case of transparency, and in the case of categorization of their books, in the case of regulatory requirements, because in the issue of like cash reserve requirements, other prudential requirements, the bank uses those kind of figures. And then, of course, too, in order to, over time, this whole department has now been created in the CBN called Consumer Protection Department, where this kind of complaints could be initiated too, even, like I said, by third parties, in this case, these deceased heirs or beneficiaries, and that could initiate some form of action. But for now, the bank itself, I think, ordinarily, like I said, based on all those requirements of confidentiality and banker-customer relationship, could hardly want to come to the aid of the deceased, except, like I said, as per the legal and regulatory requirements. You have a letter of administration or you have a will. Of course, they have a clear instruction to now deal with you as a replacement to the deceased.
Okay, thank you, Muhammad Ali Baba. Afam Osigwe, former General Secretary of the Nigerian Bar Association. We're dealing here with asset recovery of a deceased person by the heirs or the successors in title. What are the legal issues?
Well, let me just start by noting that, because it's been referred to by some earlier speakers, that the fact that you've made a person a next of kin does not indicate you intended that person to be the beneficiary of the money in your account in the event of death. Next of kin principle just simply means a person that may be contacted in certain situations. There is no beneficial interest so conferred on. Now, there are different ways account holders can ensure that on death, the monies in their account are utilized by intended persons or members of their family. And one of such ways could be by giving a specific instruction that upon death, money should be paid to a named beneficiary or named beneficiaries. So I could have an account which may not even be known to my spouse or children, but I give clear instructions to the bank that upon notification of my death, that these persons are to be paid the contents of this account. Then also another way of doing it is by having a joint account. So when you have a joint account, that's in situations to avoid the rigors of having to get letters of administration or have a will admitted to probate. So you could also have a joint account, in which case whoever survives the other person automatically takes the money in the account, except there's a contrary instruction. But in all this, an important point has been made. A bank has a confidential duty, as has been shown here, to protect the information relating to an account. And the bank is not supposed to go out on its own, finding out information about whether account holders are dead or alive. So when a person dies too, there's a duty on the bereaved to notify the bank that this person has passed on. So if you do not notify the bank cannot classify that account as belonging to that of a deceased person. But some of the regulations by the CBN were also aimed at ensuring protection of such funds. So when, as Dr. Modibo said, there has not been an operation on the account after a certain period of time, 6 months, the account is classified as dormant. So it goes into inactivity, so no withdrawals can be made to it except certain documentation is done. The whole idea is to ensure that that person is alive and comes forward. Or if the person doesn't come forward, you sometimes these days receive emails from banks requesting that they've not seen you, you can do this so that the account will be active again. So these are some of the measures. Because, as has been said by Mr. Modibo, people who don't write wills, even whether out of religious belief or there are people that believe that if they write will, then they will die. So they don't want to write a will. And we are very secretive. People don't disclose their accounts. No proper documentation is kept. So these pose challenges, and the banks cannot just come looking for people to pay them. Oh, your uncle has this money, because that uncle may well be alive and may not have intended that you know that he has such an account or such amount in his account. So these are issues. So it's balancing the difficulties, legal difficulties by being faced by a population that is bedeviled by either ignorance, poverty, and then the need to maintain banking confidentiality. In some cases, the banks actually may know that that person is dead, but they may still require proof of death. And most times, death certificates are not issued. So these are big problems. Let me stop at this.
Now that's something you said at the very beginning, that next of kin does not necessarily mean that the person will be a beneficiary of the bank balance of the
Yes.
deceased.
Yeah,
and you also mentioned, that unless there is a kind of a specific instruction given by a customer to say, look, on the occasion of my death, this money should be paid to so person. Yeah. For instance, if he did not inform the supposed beneficiary that he gave such instruction, what's the duty of the bank, legally or otherwise? This person has banked with you for a while, and you are aware that this person is dead. And of course, the instruction he gave, who will pass on the information to the supposed beneficiary? That's why I'm concerned about, the role of the role the bank should play in this, because there is need for the bank to be also sincere. The person has banked with you for a long time, and he's dead, and then someone comes up to say, look, I'm a beneficiary, and you make it difficult for that person to access the fund.
Let me make this point. I would expect any person who has named a person as a beneficiary in the event of his or her death to have supplied enough contact details for that person to be contacted. If one, for example, if I give us such an instruction, and I just said upon my death, the money should go to A, B, C, and I do not state his phone number, email address, or physical address, how would the bank be able to contact such a person?
But next of kin, that provision for address, phone number.
Next of kin. And sometimes too, many of us account holders never ever update our information. So you keep changing addresses, you don't even notify the bank. The next of kin's address has long, you may have even forgotten who is next of kin, because you only requested to do that at the point of account opening. An account may be 20, 30, 40 years old. But the point is that the point has to be made that a next of kin does not, by so named, become a beneficial interest holder in that account upon death. It's somebody you contact. For example, next of kin may be something in medical emergency where a person may not be able to take certain decisions for himself. Such a person may be required to give consent on behalf of that person. We need to understand this next of kin in that consent, because why he said it causes problem is because sometimes a person has named his brother as next of kin, then he marries. When he dies, the brother starts fighting with the wife. I'm the next of kin. I'm the person. No.
Well, at this point, we need to break down these issues.
Yeah.
One, I support Barrister that being a next of kin does not entitle you to be an heir automatically. You are just a contact point. In case of anything that happens, the bank can use the name of that contact, next of kin, to contact the family to find out what happened to the account holder. The way we need to break down the issue is, one, there is this objective that deceased money should not be trapped in banks. There is a need for family members or heirs, legal or natural heirs, to have easy access to the funds in the account. There is also the need for regulation to stop banks from profiting from such funds that are trapped in the banks. So there is a need to look at the CBN regulation of 2015 as regards dormant and inactive accounts, in which this category of deceased funds are classified. So
I was going to ask you, before we get into the details, to break it down, as you said, for the benefit of our viewers. Look, let's take the average man on the street. The impression he has is, whenever banks are looking for deposits, they will be calling you, as you very well know, they market you, come, and then the inevitable happens, and then everybody is quiet.
That's why I'm asking their own rule.
So respond to that to our viewers.
Yes.
Everybody at the bank is now silent.
Okay. So the way, that is why I say we should break it down.
Yes.
First of all, the regulation must address the issue of making it accessible by family members, either by natural family members or beneficiaries of the will, if they, so to speak. They have to have, by regulation, easy access to retrieve this money to benefit from it. The details of which can be worked out by the CBN. On the other hand, there is the moral question. As you said, when they are opening the account, the bankers will be following you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They will host you breakfast, lunch, and dinner to be able to open the account. But the moment there is money in the account and they observe inactivity or dormancy, they feign ignorance, and they just keep quiet and allow this thing to continue, whether or not the family is aware of that account. If the family is even aware, the bank will give you very strict documentation conditions that you have to meet certain documentation. Go and bring this, go and bring that. Before you access this money, it could be 1 or 2 or 3 years. Or it is even worse where the family members are not aware of that account. It may be a secret account, a saving account that you have not told anybody. So here, my opinion is that there is a need for CBN to enact certain regulation to disincentivize the banks to not to continue to sit on this money. For instance, when you come to calculate the bank's cash reserve requirement, you can subtract out that amount of money based on the regular returns they make to CBN as stated by Alhaji Alibaba. Remove it so that you can make the cash reserve requirement calculation more stiff, more difficult for the banks. They will have no incentive of keeping that quiet on that money. Secondly, banks must be allowed by regulation or must be forced by regulation to be publishing in the newspapers, just like how they publish the names of recalcitrant debtors. Let them also publish the names of dormant accounts without necessarily stating the balances. Let them publish the names of the dormant accounts in the newspapers, so that family members who go through such can see or may see the names of their own deceased person who has an account in the social bank that they may not be aware. Thirdly, banks use these monies and invest them in the interbank market, in the money market. CBN should prohibit banks from making any income on such monies of deceased persons or inactive accounts or dormant accounts. I can assure you, Kingsley, as even a banker, a lawyer, and a fund manager, I know a bank where I stopped banking with them over 20 years ago, and the last time I went to the bank, I knew I had 20,000 naira. I've not gone back there up till today, and I'm alive. But the bank has never approached me to say, your account is dormant, you still have 20,000 naira there. There are thousands or millions of people
That's right.
that have small balances, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, or even 50,000. But the banks never go by the regulation. The regulation says that every 3 months, you should contact this person and find out why is his account dormant. Why is there no activity? The banks only contact you where they know you are a big man, you have money, but your account is inactive. So they will contact you so that you can bring in more money. But if they know you are a deceased person, or you are not a very rich person, and your account is inactive, and you have balances, small balances there will be no incentive for them to look for it because the balance you have is only 5,000. But by the time you aggregate 5,000 naira balances in, say, like 5 million accounts, that's a huge amount of money that the banks are investing, making income, and profiting from it. Regulation should prohibit that, and that one will be a disincentive for them, and it will encourage them to look for the families to come and clear those accounts. Either come and collect the money and go, bring required documentation, collect the money and go, so that they can close that account and forget about it.
That's interesting. I think we are breaking it down now for sure, because we're beginning to understand that there are loopholes which these banks, cash in on, to do what they're doing. Let's keep in mind that the whistleblower here is a bank manager who may have participated in this. The lady is a bank manager. She's talking out of experience. It's not as if it's a hearsay thing. She was involved, and she felt, look, this shouldn't continue. She came to the open, to say it. So that means it's a serious matter. Let's return to Lagos, where we have Segun Ajibola. Segun Ajibola, you listened to Modibo a short while ago, trying to break it down, and of course letting us know that there are responsibilities of banks that are not adhered to, that could also lead to what we're discussing this morning. So what's your take?
Thank you. Let's break it down further. Starting from who is a next of kin? What are the rights? What are the obligations, if any? Simplicity, and as a lawyer, a next of kin is not necessarily a beneficial owner of any of the assets of a deceased person. But I have seen account opening documents of banks where the next of kin is also couched in a way that gives him or her access to the deposits or any other assets of a deceased person, if that happens. So it first of all depends on how and the definition and the rights and obligations assigned to a next of kin in that account opening document that is already signed off by the customer. Now, on the responsibility of the banks, I think one point has come out clearly. Banks should state clearly who the beneficiary should be upon his death or his son. Now there is, even when that is stated and that's observed again, if the beneficiary, the will-be beneficiary, is not aware and the account holder dies, how does he know? Will the bank be responsible for contacting him to let him know that you are the beneficial owner? That gap needs to be filled. And we know there are moral, cultural issues here. I remember dealing with a customer as a banker, and I was asking the customer, is your next of kin or the beneficiary aware of this account? He said, if somebody is aware, either it's my son or my wife or whatever, that I have this much in my bank account, they may even help to accelerate my exit. from this planet. So I keep it secret because I don't want to die that early. So these are some of next of will be beneficiary upon death. Secondly, we should look at the responsibility a separate return, not just the general return, separate returns on deceased customers' account. Separate returns that should list out. First, we should fix how the banks must be made aware, either express or constructive notice that the customer is dead. Then separate returns rendered to central bank in respect of this. Central bank will now have that responsibility of asking questions, maybe periodically. What's the status of these returns? What's the status of deceased customers' accounts with you? And as earlier said again, publishing dormant accounts, well, I don't know, tier 1 banks in Nigeria that may have 5,000 dormant accounts at any point in time, 10,000, 50,000. Some of them have over 1 million customers' accounts. So I don't know how easy that will be. But again, we should look at the judicial aspect. Why is it that obtaining letter of administration in this part of the world is so frustrating? I've dealt with customers upon their death. They had 100,000, 200,000. And when either the son, the wife, or whoever now looks at what it would take to procure a letter of administration, it is not worth the effort. So how do we make it much simpler? Some of us, we've advocated for a commercial court before that can deal with some of these issues. I don't know why procuring a letter of administration in this part of the world should take more than 3 months. I've seen customers pursuing same for 2-3 years without success, eventually abandoning their accounts. So how do we make the judicial process more friendly? How do we make the judicial there may be need for amendment to some of the extant laws governing this subject matter. Because if some of the provisions of the law tie the hands of the banks as to what they can do and what they cannot do, there's nothing they can do. Some of the next of kin or beneficiary and so on and so forth, they will just be there. The banks will just make reference to the provisions of the extant laws. So what provisions of law should give way? Is it the CBN Act 2007? Is it the NDIC Act? Because banks operate under very strict regulations. So the regulations tie the hands of the banks as to what they can do with deceased deposits. It becomes a judicial problem. So what do we do? How can we take steps? Then we should also appeal to the conscience of the customers. I've seen customers too, an example where every piece of information about his account relationship with banks was in just simple smartphone, passworded, and nobody could access. Simple information like that. So there are moral issues, there are legal issues, there are ethical issues. All of them need to be addressed in a basket for us to get out of this. Because if the bank, however willing the banks may be, if their hands are tied, we still run into this kind of problem. We still run into this kind of situation. But banks should be more transparent too in dealing with these deposits. As observed, it's not a question of, oh, I am aware. And that's why I was talking about either express or constructive notice should be sufficient. I am aware it's published in the newspaper, but because the family members have not contacted me, then I owe nobody any responsibility. If that is what the law says, the law should be amended. Constructive notice should be enough to know that a customer, a depositor for that matter, has passed on. And I now have responsibilities towards either the beneficiaries. And let's look at what the documents are saying. Some documents are couched, accountability documents, they are couched in a way that you look at the next of kin as if it's the beneficiary, the way the wordings are stated out. Where that is not the case, it must be compulsory for any customer opening an account to state who the beneficiary should be. Finally, part of the regulation from Central Bank may be that every customer should update his account information either every 3 years or every 5 years. Some still carry 20, 25, 30-year-old address with their banks. And when the unexpected happens, nobody within that vicinity could even remember that somebody like that lived there. So how often should the accounts be updated? I think regulation should address this. Thank you.
We'll come to. Okay, Mr. Segun Ajibola, thank you very much. And indeed, all the other three guests who are here with us in the Abuja studios, we must appreciate what the viewpoints that you have expressed. And in particular, Kieran, the suggested propositions to overcome this challenge. I think we have all come to realize now the magnitude of this problem that has social, ethical, legal in particular, as well as regulatory dimensions. We're taking a short break now. We already have a torrent of tweets, as you can imagine from our viewers. But when we return, we'll still look at one aspect of the legal perspective and then return to get the tweets that you have sent in. Let's go on a break now.
You can choose to manage everything else, but not your data. Get more out of life with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# today. Data is life.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
My name is Balaunti. I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage, whereby smuggling triumphed by taking petroleum product across the neighbors so that they can be sold at higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is distorting everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translate to a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. No be only to connect lights.
Come do on yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will look for with this.
Oh.
Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting me talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from off.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to our guest here with us in the Abuja studios, Mazi Afamosigwe. Where you guys have explained the meaning and significance of a next of kin. A next of kin is not an automatic beneficiary of the balance in the bank upon the demise of the holder of that particular account. It also said, okay, let there be a specific instruction, or let the form, the bank account opening form or update form, be so structured so that a named beneficiary or named beneficiaries, doesn't have to be one person, can be indicated in that, and then the bank would also have access to that. Ajibola in Lagos has talked about actual or express and constructive notice. These are legal issues. Afamosigwe, I want you to also come in here. You might have a next of kin, expressly stated. You might also have named beneficiaries, expressly stated. But these can obviously come into conflict with the provisions in a will. A will, of course, can override all of those things that you have stated, assuming there's even a codicil, that gets into the will. That's one leg of it. But we know that wills have also been subject to sometimes lengthy disputations by family members, whether wealthy or otherwise, and we have seen their reports all over, including some prominent families. That's one. Now, the refuge would appear to be, okay, I don't want to write a will, or the person doesn't want to write a will because there is a fear that it might accelerate the demise of the individual. So the person dies intestate, in other words, without a will. To go and obtain letters of administration for the estate, you guys have all indicated, is a tedious problem. How then do we reform our probate system to ensure that letters of administration are not as difficult to obtain as they appear to be this time?
Well, some states, and I'd say one of FCT, for example, has tried to simplify it such that you can process letters of administration without necessarily having to engage a lawyer. So they have people who attend to walk-in persons and guide them through the documentation. But that is not to say that it still makes the process very fast, because there are certain timelines, publications have to be made, you give notice just to be sure that the right persons are the ones who are processing the letters of administration, and they have to go. And in some cases where the accounts are identified, the probate registry has to write to the bank to disclose the amounts in the account and then pay them over to them. So, but the process can be made a lot simpler to help those who may not be able to afford some of the statutory fees and administrative fees involved. I mean, what sense does it make if the money in the account is 30, 40, 50,000 and you have to spend much more than that to go after this money? I may not quickly give you a suggestion that may work in this kind of situation, but I think we need to make it such that for those for whom that 20,000, 50,000 may mean a whole lot of money, that the process should be simplified to enable them access these funds without having to expend it or being forced to abandon it because of the administrative bottlenecks and then the huge costs involved. But the bottom line in this discussion is the need for the monies in the accounts of deceased persons not to be utilized other than for the purposes of the estate or for the beneficiaries, not to put hurdles in the way to make it difficult for them to access it, imposing a duty on the bank to contact these families where they maybe through social media, through newspaper, news reports, the bank is aware, or even the accounts or relationship officer is aware this person is dead, notifying the family that such a person had an account with them, so that the steps could be taken to access the funds, and for the bank not to use it as free funds to use in the interbank market or for some other financial transaction. I think if we're able to look at some of the very interesting suggested recommendations that have come up thus far in the conversation, it will go a long way in making these funds unavailable for the use of the banks, so that the beneficiaries of this money or the estate will be the ultimate beneficiary. I mean, we can't rule out the fact that there may be such money trapped in banks for 5, 10 years, It could be worse where there's a legal dispute within a family as to who is entitled. But in the absence of litigation or legal dispute, such funds, we have to find a way of making it easier. Then there was a point you mentioned, no, it was not your question. If there's a named beneficiary to be paid on death and then that money is given in a will, there are some jurisdictions that say that if a person has been named in an account as a beneficiary upon death, that a will cannot supersede that. Some others are of the opinion that if a will is made subsequently disposing of the same fund, then that the will should be made to take effect. It should supersede that earlier instruction. I've not come across any Nigerian case that has had to deal with this, but I'm sure that it's an issue that can always be pronounced upon by the judiciary when confronted with such a scenario.
Yeah, it is now clear that lawyers also have a hand in making it difficult for people to... Excuse me. No. See, this has been established. It has been established by what he explained. Because by the time you go through the process of engaging a lawyer for the purpose of getting letter of administration, it takes years. So why should that be? It's just like cases we have in court are dragged for years. It's the legal system.
The lawyer has to work with a system. And in some states, really, they will insist on you paying some tax up front before they can process it. It is not the situation here in the FCT, but I know in some states, they will insist on charging, of doing evaluation of the estate, doing so many things, I'm happy. You paying up front. So it's not a lawyer's issue.
No. I'm happy.
And Kirian, you see, there's another point I want you to know.
There are political scientists who have accounts.
Not only that. Another point is that trapped money in the bank for the deceased is not the only asset he has left behind.
Exactly.
So there are other assets like landed property, like even other monies in other accounts that they are worth.
We are concerned about the monies in the bank.
You cannot do one at a time and leave the other.
No, for this edition, we're talking about monies in the bank.
Kira, please note the point that he has made.
Yes.
See, when you talk about the estate of a deceased, it incorporates all these bank deposits.
Program, we are concerned about the bank, the money, cash, liquid cash in the bank, which is what the whistleblower was talking about. And that brings us to the issue of, to be honest with you, because before this whistleblower came up with this information, she was a banker. Right. And you know that there are bankers who live above their means in this country. Individual bankers, not necessarily the bank as a corporate body. Some persons in the bank, like managers, could be doing this without the knowledge of the authority of that bank. That's a point I want us to recognize. It's not as if maybe corporately the bank says this is what we need to, what we should be doing with people's money. It is the bankers themselves, the managers who know how to do this manipulation in different banks that are doing this.
They could just be trading with it.
Exactly.
So
That is the bank.
That is why
it's the bank that benefits from it, not the banker.
No, the whistleblower is talking about managers manipulating the deceased fund.
Exactly.
That's a fraud.
Using it to loan
exactly.
People
That's
absolutely.
Tampering with
yes. When Treasury, sorry, Kida, I know you're going to ask your question. I mean, because our viewers are familiar with this. At the time when interest rate on Treasury bills were very high, well and above the deposit interest rates. So it is possible. I'm not saying that what happened. It is possible that, so look, this account that has been idle for the past 2-3 years, let me quickly move this one, buy TBs, and then once 90 days, once you don't quickly put it back.
Kingsley, the branch manager doesn't buy T-bills.
No, he could just move it.
The people who trade in T-bills are not more than 2 or 3 people in the head office. It's not the branch manager that buys it.
I am coming to you now.
Such trap funds are sometimes unlawfully utilized by fraudulent bankers to do private business.
Especially where they know the deceased is deceased. The owner of the account is
and
dead.
they have relationship when they do that.
Gentlemen, just last year, a well-known business mogul from the East, the transporter, had about 2.5 billion naira posted into his account. He questioned it. He called the MD of the bank. Where is this money coming from? Were you people doing business with my money or something? But I don't know where this money is coming from. Please reverse it. And it was reversed. So this is the kind of funds we're talking about. He said, please reverse this money because I don't know where it's coming from. Because he's a sincere person, you know. And so there are movements of money in the banks manipulated by bank officials, maybe unknown to some bank officials, and maybe unknown to the authority of the bank. So what I'm trying to ask you is this: in the face of it all, how can a beneficiary access the money left by the deceased? Should there be a role of the bank to inform whoever is the next of kin, because of course every bank has details of either next of kin or whatever notification that they have during the opening of the account, should the bank not have the responsibility of saying, look, this deceased person was our customer, and this is what he put down in that column, and of course engage the beneficiaries?
Well, just like we said, since we are recommending a review, because ordinarily, like we said, under the regulation, maybe every 3 or 6 months, they are supposed to actually reach out to the customer. I mean, even for the purpose of marketing, your account has been dormant. Please come on. And some of them have actually reached us, especially with this, what do you call it, electronic systems. You will see
by email,
by email or by SMS. You see that. Now, perhaps arising from that, when after maybe several such efforts, maybe that is when they could extend it by way of regulation, of course, like we're saying, since we're trying to reform the system. But ordinarily, it is their responsibility to reach out to your account of government. So if after 2 or 3 efforts, I mean, no response, perhaps it's now time to escalate the matter to the next of kin, or particularly maybe, if possible, the regulatory authorities. I mean, it's all part of what we say. And then particularly more efforts. You are talking of still realizing the perhaps for the purpose of calculation, but ordinarily, any deposit in a bank, you can't preclude the bank from using it, because that is what they are there for.
No, but
if it's
discouraging them from using it to profit from it, if they cannot do their own part of the bucket. You see, what I'm saying is that there may be regulation, but there is no robust intention or interest from the side of the banks to contact this the owner of that dormant account. So there has to be in that regulation some disincentive or some sanction so that they will contact this person. For instance, the regulation says that the moment an account is dormant for 9 months, the remaining 3 months to make it fully dormant after 1 year, the bank has obligation to look for him to come and reactivate the account. Exactly. The question is, do they do it?
That's the experience would appear to be no. Okay, now we indicated that we have a torrent of tweets. Kieran and I are having to go. All right, we have another set of tweets that will join what we have. But let's just quickly enter this caveat. Kieran, I think it's important for the benefit of our viewers. If you are out there and somebody calls you from a bank and say you are the next of kin to this account and that we have not heard from this customer for the past 2 years, give us your BVN, give us your debit card number, give us your number behind it. That is a 419 call. Don't fall for it. We have had scammers in the past. That's particularly what they use, is scamming some people abroad. They will say, oh, you had seed deposit, the many person left it for you, you are the named beneficiary, you will need to pay some advance money. Don't fall for it. What you need to do, physically go to the bank yourself, assuming there's any such thing, thank the person, you do well, for calling as Nigerians to say, no problem, at which branch? Physically go there, and then go there with somebody who is knowledgeable so that you can have clear instructions. If you are not such a person and you are looking to harvest where you have not sown or where your testator has not sown, you get into trouble. So that's the caveat. Let's take
Okay, we have some tweets which shows that many Nigerians are interested in this topic, and of course that's why we have many of them here. Let's start with Smart. He says, what normally happens in this scenario is that most bank staff may reactivate the account, i.e. it is dormant account, and eventually make away with the money.
Law Alpha C. Acquiring letters of administration takes a lot of time and its attendant rigors. And some people may forfeit the money in the process to the banks, who in turn pocket such monies because banks tend to know the value of the money more than depositors.
Now, O.T. Zokbe, he said, if the family later finds out after 20 years about such money, is there a possibility of getting back the money, especially when banks merge?
That's right. That's a very pertinent question. You have legacy accounts and so on. Okay, Gabriel Kambai, I used to think that when accounts become dormant, the funds will be transferred to the government coffers to finance public projects. But I hope with a crystallized database on BVN, the CBN and commercial banks will be able to know when a person is dead and contact the next of kin of the deceased.
Titus Monday Knock. That is why the next of kin documents should be properly preserved, and one should have a family confidant to entrust the keeps of such and other related details for reference. It is, however, unfortunate how sometimes the living have the audacity to pray on the dead. So unfortunate.
Yeah, Akeju Olagbaju, in Nigeria, the families have the means to trace such account and will always go to probate court to assert the claim. The fact that the TSA is working makes it easier to aggregate the network of deposit accounts into a single unit. I don't understand this point.
All right, Ibrahim Moduaji said CBN needs to come up with policies to discourage financial secrecy, where depositors with an amount exceeding 5 million must be jointly signed with a next of kin to avoid families being robbed by bankers. A dormant account, especially with a huge amount for 5 years, should be known to CBN.
Chidi Amade, most issues in Nigeria are like this, very unclear.
Now, Chris Simeon, this kind of issue is not a surprise to me. Some years ago, I discussed with two of my colleagues who are financial experts. They said such bank deposits would be pushed to a dormant account, and then in due course, the money will be shared among top bank managers.
Gabriel, come by again. We just want to take the privilege of having this second tweet. In Nigeria, it's very common for a person to have multiple bank accounts with many banks and still don't want his family members to know about some of his savings. Remember, in the case of death, the bank will not contact your family or next of kin. At least use a diary.
Jack Solomon, he said, one way to help your family with this is to keep an up-to-date list of your accounts and investments, either with your will or give someone a password for access to a document containing this information. Nigerian banks would like to keep the monies for their own use. Please wisen up.
Let's Google Silvanos. National Assembly should make a law mandating commercial banks to publish every account that remains dormant for up to 6 months, 6 months consecutively, so family members of the owners of such accounts will be alerted. A situation where banks unlawfully use such funds privately is unacceptable.
Now, Mike Anyako says, in a scenario where the families are not aware, the funds will continue to be part of the bank's deposits. Some banks cleverly push the deposits to dormant accounts to avoid interest payments. During the last consolidation, some of these deposits were fraudulently converted into equity by some banks in order to meet up with their 25 billion naira minimum paid-up capital. They reserved the transactions after consolidation, or they reversed the transactions after consolidation. There was no real inflow of funds into the banks. What's the after effect? Continued distrust in the system.
All right, Kieran, I will skip to Adekunle Olayemi because we're taking Mike Ayankwa on that. Adekunle Olayemi tweet says some bankers are doing it. They are using some people's accounts to do business or withdraw the money from the bank account and use it to enrich themselves. Government should find a way to stop this habit.
DW Nigeria Limited. This topic is out of the box, sort of. I have thought about that too in my mind. I think CBN does something about it also. But again, it can be that such monies could be shared by the bank people. I don't know, really. We need more info on this.
Now, Thomas Mbangu tweets, now there's criminality going on in some banks in Nigeria. When one dies without the family knowing the account details, the bank hardly informs the family members. One of my banker friends told me that if it is discovered a worker in a bank informs the family members, he will be sacked.
Yes, what Subuto says, I want to know what banks do with accounts that have been dormant for as long as 20 years.
Joseph, it's a criminal offense. After all, they have details of the deceased customers. They should contact the family to improve their living standards.
Kumo Augustine, bank executives and officials are happy when their customers with huge credit balances fail to operate their accounts for a prolonged period. If such persons are presumed dead, then the banks use such monies as solid financial base.
Now, let's take this one from Wahid. Wahid, it says... Joseph, very briefly, he said banks are declaring huge profits yearly while the citizens are financially suffering. Do something. But this is Wahid. It is unfortunate that banks in Nigeria swallow those kinds of deposits. However, if the disease is one that is indebted to the bank, his or her family will be contacted at the appropriate time.
Of course.
Yes, to fine-tune the process and recover the money.
Omobola Babs, one way to help sanitize the banking system vis-a-vis today's discussion is for CBN to make use of the BVN. With BVN, family members of such deceased persons can be tracked and informed accordingly. But then, do we have people who are sincere enough without conniving with banks?
Now, Osman Banu Kanto tweets, now there are situations where after obtaining court affidavit, closing the account of the deceased, outstanding payments are made into the account and such monies remain trapped forever.
Sani Michael Amokoji, even though the deceased left behind details of the next of kin, banks in Nigeria will never contact him or her. This is also the practice of many insurance companies. Stringent conditions are given to prevent next of kin from claiming the money. This has to change.
Corey Mustafa tweets, the CBN should channel such monies, that is to say bank balances of deceased persons unclaimed, to the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry for proper usage if the deceased beneficiaries are not found.
Now, Yusuf Gaya, regarding monies of deceased customers in banks, rather than stop the banks from investing the balances suggested by my learned friend Adamu Modibo, perhaps banks should be made to share the profits they get from investing such credit balances.
Now, Izuchi Marios tweets, this topic of managing bank balances of deceased persons is very crucial. God bless your guests. They have said it all. I hope the federal government will take swift action on this. These banks and the so-called regulations or regulators are making life a hell for living Nigerians.
Benga Obamedo, I am fully in support of Mr. Shego Ajibola. If these recommendations are followed, it will lighten the workload. Of course, he says, state clearly on the account opening forms the would-be beneficiary. 2, make letter of administration easier to acquire, among others.
Now, Subuloye tweets, till now, no bank in Nigeria recognizes next of kin when it comes to the issue of money. They will only ask for letters of administration.
Now, it's enough from Festus Akimbewa. It's tough to know what to do when a family member dies. Talk less of the bureaucracy surrounding the financial issues of the deceased. We should learn to plan for the future, and there should be a law that would make it easier for family members to have access to deceased bank deposits.
Now, MK Ibrahim tweets, now the assets of thousands of deceased Nigerians in foreign banks have been lost because of stringent laws. In some countries, beneficiaries need wills, death certificates, autopsies, certificate from director of funerals, and evidence of tax and utility payments. These are some of the monies in the Swiss bank accounts where you have secret codes. If you don't have that secret code, just forget it.
Yes.
But we are talking about monies within our jurisdiction.
Exactly.
This bank, if you can see the names of banks wherever you are going now. You all have accounts. If you don't have a BVN, you cannot even do transactions. We are talking about financial inclusion. And then we're millions of Nigerians. So what happens when that person passes on? That's what our guests have been talking about, and what our tweets have also been contributing to.
Now, D-Man, Islam strongly requires all followers to have a kind will list of belongings, but the sharing formula is preordained, so this is not an issue, but just the ignorance. That's
that's right. That's a demand I was talking about.
Yes.
Islamic. Well, of course, those are the tweets that we can accommodate. I just, in some jurisdictions, in the state of New York, for instance, when an account hasn't been operated, I wouldn't know whether the law has changed, and it's been so for so many years, the money goes into a trust. And it is that trust is held by the state of New York. And the money is not available to the banks to be transacting business, which is what Adamu Modibo and indeed other guests, Ajibola as well, have been saying, that banks, if that is the current practice, cannot be profiting from the bank balances of their deceased customers without paying interest to those particular accounts and therefore to the estate of the deceased persons.
And more to that is the fact that some individuals in some banks do this without the knowledge of the bank's authority. And that's what the whistleblower came up with in the first place.
That's right.
Yes.
And we do hope that you've enjoyed this conversation. There are many opportunities for regulatory reform. There are also many opportunities for legal reform. In other words, if you need to have amendments to particular sections of the law or extant laws, we hope that the lawmakers, particularly the National Assembly, would take advantage of it, because banking is on the exclusive legislative list, and therefore it matters strictly for the National Assembly.
Okay.
So, Kieran, let's sign up for this, and I appreciate that.
At this point, we'd like to appreciate all our guests, for doing justice to this very important topic. First, Ademu Modibo, former Managing Director, Sigma Pensions, and of course a banker, former banker.
And a lawyer.
And a lawyer as well. See, this lawyer, okay, you are a lawyer as well.
Thank you, Thank you, Kirian.
And of course, Afamo Osigwe, former Secretary General of Nigerian Bar Association, also a lawyer. We thank you for coming. All right. And Mohammed Ali Baba, former Director at the Central Bank of Nigeria. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning.
Thank you very much.
From Lagos, Shegu Ajibola, former President, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. We thank you for your very crucial contribution this morning on the show.
He's also a lawyer.
He's also a lawyer. You have dominated the making this difficult for us.
All right, let's go over now to our sports desk. There's no law in sports at this time.